Welcome to the Running Channel podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how difficult it is to double your distance. So to go from half marathon to a full marathon. And it's perfect timing because we're joined by the Running Channel's Jess, who's just come back from sunny Seville, where she ran her 5th of the 42 marathons that she's taking on this year in memory of her brother.
Absolutely incredible. I'm not sure if you're aware, Jess, but Andy and Sarah have been trying to get me to run another marathon. I have done one.
Do it.
But to do another one, and you've run donkey amounts so far this year, which is absolutely ridiculous. So this is either going to be completely off-putting or it's going to inspire me to the hilt.
Can you be inspired to the hilt? Either way, we're going to be covering this topic as well as talking about the latest running news and answering your questions.
Right, let's get into it.
I'm glad we didn't give you too much of an intro there. Yeah. You just got the easy bit. Straight in.
The difficult bit for Jess, in the mood that you're in today, is going to be getting a word in.
I am so excited to see you. Yeah. Although, you know what? I know I'm excited to see you and talk to you, but are you excited to talk to me?
Well, funnily
because
so you didn't want me to talk?
No, because I was in the Wirral and I texted Andy last weekend, Jess, and I said, Andy, I'm going to Birkenhead Parkrun on Saturday morning. Would you like to join me? Nothing on the Friday, no return. Saturday morning,
blanked.
Nothing. Post Parkrun, nothing. Saturday afternoon. Oh, you run quite a nice split on your first KM, mate. That was his response.
Well, I mean,
4:13.
Much like many things that you've covered, much like many things that you've covered on the Running Channel, there are significant factual inaccuracies in what you've just rolled out to us there.
No, I'd say that was all accurate.
If I was to scroll through my WhatsApp messages right now, one, you texted me at 8 minutes to 11 on Friday night.
So no response on Friday night?
Yeah, that's true. That's factually accurate. But I was asleep. I was asleep because
no excuse.
I have to do some parenting.
Yeah, keep going.
And then I did text you back before the parkrun started at 8 something on Saturday morning saying, sorry mate, I've only just read this, I won't make it.
Oh, the reception's poor in the world. It must have come through.
Yeah, because I'm imagining you just all these texts from you.
I must have looked at my phone because I was sitting there pondering life after I did parkrun. It was busy parkrun up in the Wirral, 800 runners, and I was sitting there and I was listening to Classic FM, that radio station for people who like classical music who weren't privately educated. Here's that song from that butter advert you like. And thinking, does Andy still...
Are you auditioning?
Does Andy still like me?
It does sound like you need to make some new friends.
Yeah, well, I did, mate.
You made some new friends at the parkrun, didn't you? Although probably not in the first kilometre because you went off like an absolute lunatic. And that is why I texted you about it later. I saw your Strava stats.
What was the final?
What's your personal best for parkrun?
22:38.
So your 5K personal best, 22:38, which is 4:31, 4:32-ish. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
In terms of splits? 4:11 was your first kilometre.
Yeah. What was the last one?
It was about 4:58 or something.
Yeah. It's slightly downhill, that first bit.
Yeah.
And whenever I've done it, I've been swept along with the crowd.
With the enthusiasm.
Yes. And I remember looking down at one point, the last time I did it before Christmas, because it's a long, sweeping, gentle downhill, so you can actually run really fast. Looking around me, and I was, in probably 10th or 15th place.
When did you finish? Where did you finish?
I finished second that day.
Well done.
But I looked at my watch and it said 3 minute per kilometre pace, and I wasn't in 15-minute 5K shape. And there were 15 people in front of me at that point, and I wasn't casting aspersions, but I was pretty sure that they weren't all in sub 15-minute shape. And then it basically is that first kilometre, I think.
It is so fast. And it's when you do big races, not just parkruns.
Because parkrun's not a race.
Because parkrun's not a race. And when you do these big races, not races, runs, and you don't know where to start because you're not familiar with the start line.
Yeah.
So you're often, if it's not line timed, then you're running for maybe 20, 25 meters, 30 meters before you cross the line.
Well, and also you're waiting to get across the line if there's 1,000 people there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was... And then your watch is a bit more off compared to your normal run if you start close to the line.
But you're a technology expert, so
so I just hit it at the right time and see how it went.
To make adjustments.
And see how it went. But no, it is really nice to see it, and it was a great run up there. Jess?
Before we start on this, Rick said that he has spoken to 800 people at Parkrun. Well, so I'm just intrigued on how you talked to all 800 people.
He said that they only wanted to talk about you, though.
That is true, actually. Yeah, I'll take that.
Do you want to talk? I mean, listen, as much as the Wirral is absolutely glorious and the weather was pristine last week.
Always.
In fact, before we get into that, I'm going to ask you about Seville in a second. My old parkrun, right, Greenwich Parkrun, you used to call it Yemen Parkrun.
Well, you lived so far out of London that you claimed you lived in the Royal Borough of Greenwich, because technically you did.
I did.
It was about 4 hours outside of London.
They're renaming it. Have you ever heard of a parkrun being renamed?
No.
It's being changed to Avery Hill Parkrun.
Oh, is that one of the hills within Greenwich?
No, it's in Avery Hill Park, Greenwich Parkrun. Right. But it confused people because when it was created, it was the only parkrun in the Royal Borough of Greenwich. Yeah. Oh. But since then, other parkruns have emerged in the borough. So they've decided to give up on the name and maybe give it to someone else. I don't think they're giving it to anyone else, but it's going to be called Avery Hill.
So boring.
Sorry. It's very interesting for the people who run in Greenwich. Anyway,
that niche little.
I'm going to jump in because you said that you were very pleased to see me this morning.
Yes.
Or this afternoon as you came in for the podcast. And actually, Stevie from the Running Channel was sat with me as you entered the office today.
Yes.
And he said, as you walked off, as I'd already greeted you, he goes, "Andy, that was really sweet. Rick walked in and he was behind me and I didn't know who'd come into the office, but I just saw your face light up. And then I turned around and saw that it was Rick. And I was glad to see you.
That is lovely. And I reciprocated by kissing you on your head.
I feel like you guys need to get a room here. Shall I just leave?
Well, you had a room in Seville for the 5th of your 42 marathon attempts, which is bonkers. So tell us about it.
Yeah, it was so good. So I was running with 2 people that I didn't know that well before this. So one of them is Sophia from the club and the other one was Simon. And yeah, it was really good. It was nice to get into some sunshine. Yeah. That was a bonus. And it was the first event run of my 42. So it was
the first official one.
Yeah, official event. So yeah, the atmosphere was really cool. I've never run Seville before. Yeah. So I was going to ask if either of you have, but no.
Well, I've only done one marathon and so's Rick. But I got a little bit of a lowdown on our run this morning, a few hours ago at lunchtime. You made me run in the rain, despite me saying, the rain's going to stop in an hour, Jess. And you were like, no, it's not. It's going to rain all day. And then 55 minutes into our run.
Hey, I don't come on this podcast very often. So if I came on the podcast looking like a drowned rat, everyone would think I'd always look like a drowned rat. So I needed to impress everyone today. So yeah.
So you dragged our new starter out on a hike.
We had a new team member
in the rain
today,
and still, yeah. It was great actually. I haven't been on a run with Andy in a very long time. I don't know the last time.
How did it go? Was he kind?
Well, it was nice for me. It was very much like this podcast with you, Rick.
Yeah.
Where Jess just spoke at me for the whole time. I desperately tried to chip in.
I did. I got way too excited. I was just talking about Seville. So Sophia.
We got some insights into your dating life as well, didn't we? Oh yeah. Should we not talk about that on the podcast though?
No, we probably shouldn't talk about that.
Give me a little hint.
No. I've put Jess in the hot seat there. So let's talk about Seville.
Yeah. So Sophia was doing her first ever marathon, and it made me think so much about my first marathon because
what was your first one?
My first one was along the Thames in London in November. Freezing cold, raining so hard, and I dragged I don't know how many friends along who were doing the half marathon, and everyone got there and was like, why do we run with you? This is so awful. So yeah, I was kind of basically telling Sophia the whole time how lucky she was to be running in the sunshine.
How lucky she was to be running with you.
And to be running with me, obviously, yeah.
No. In fairness, she was lucky to be running with you because you are a ray of sunshine. Even on my run today, I'm joking about how much you were talking.
No, she is.
But it's the fastest
she is.
Time has flown for me in running for a long time because you were just chatting away and it was so jolly that I was loving every moment.
Yeah, Chantal calls you Mother Hen.
Really?
The person who holds the clucking house together.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Yeah, no, I think I like to think though that I know the line. So you know when you're 34 kilometers into a marathon and you're literally in the pits. So Sophia got to that point where she thought she wasn't going to hit that all-time low. She was so positive for the whole thing, and then you could see the point where she was breaking a little bit. And Simon, bless him, was trying to tell these jokes to kind of bring her back and trying to make her laugh. And you could just see that Sophia was like, no, I'm not. She just said, I'm non-verbal at this point, and I was just kind of almost like, come on then, let's go this way. I think we've hit the point where we don't need to talk.
During the marathon, did you have to talk the whole way through?
No. I think it's quite nice to have a bit of time where you're not talking. I mean, I say that as I...
Were you using your motivational...
Says Rick never.
But were you using your motivational skills, which you have in abundance, to pull these guys along?
I'd like to think so. I think we had some really nice chats. You know, like we were really excited at the start. Then we got into a few deeper conversations around like the half marathon mark. A few like good dancing, good vibes. And then around when he got tough into the 30s, that's when we, did a bit more walking. We walked through the water stations. We really pulled each other together. And that's when I think it's really nice to have people,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to struggle at different points. So we could all pull each other back at different points.
So what was their story? How did they come along with the running channel to run Seville? And what was their backstory in running?
So Sophia, it was her first ever marathon. She's part of our club, so she had heard about me running this and wanted to get involved. So it was a really nice way for her to do her first one and kind of experience that with other people. And then Simon had actually gone to do Valencia last year and had gone out fast going for a time, completely hated it, didn't get his time and kind of lost the love of running. So he wanted to get back to running and enjoy it again. So he thought running with me might make him enjoy running again. And I actually didn't hear that he hated running afterwards. So
Really?
I think it must have worked.
So no complaints?
Yeah.
Well, I think that Sophia's story is the perfect segue into what we're supposed to be talking about. So it's her first ever marathon. So she's having to make that step from the half marathon to the marathon. And so within the Running Channel Club, there's a tribe for people running their first ever marathon. And I know that she was part of that. So today's episode is all about how hard is it to make that step? And I would say for me, it was very hard. I was a little bit blasé about being able to run a half marathon and don't think I realised what that step was going to be like. But at the same time, loads of people listening to this podcast right now are training for a marathon.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to put you off. I'm just trying to think about how to mentally prepare for it. And also, I guess what are the main differences?
Yeah, I think it's a lot. It's a lot in the training, isn't it? It's that dedication and putting those hours aside. Like when you start bumping up that training, those longer runs, you kind of write off your weekend a little bit more than you did with your half marathon. It's a lot more hours of being out there. You need to have people behind you that are going to be understanding that you're going to be out there a bit more. You might want a little foot massage when you get back.
No, it's an excellent point. No, it's about as much about what you're not doing because of your running as it is about your running. Whereas doing a half marathon, being that kind of consistent training blocks for half marathons as I've kind of been the last 6 months, I've always found that kind of it's part of your week. You get out 2 or 3 times, but it's manageable.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're getting into your marathon training and you're doing that long run, you're building yourself up to 20 miles. I mean, that's 3 or 4, 5 hours out your Sunday that's taken up.
Yeah, you've got to set aside the time for it and protect it rather than squeezing it in around everything else that you do.
Yeah.
That was the single biggest difference for me. I'd got to the point where, and I was training for my first ever marathon, but I also had quite aggressive time goals. And I'd got to the point in previous years where I could easily run a half marathon every Sunday as part of my training for other stuff, which I appreciate is different to other people. But because of that, I don't think I'd realised how different it would feel to try and run 2 or 2.5 hours on a Sunday instead of trying to run for an hour and a half. Like that extra bit was so different to the time it took out of the day. It wasn't just the extra time on my feet.
Yeah.
It was the prep and like the food and the nutrition and then the recovery afterwards that really wiped out a big chunk of my Sunday.
Yeah, and I think Andy included, but a lot of people take the mick out of me socialising on my runs and dating on runs or whatever it is. It's because there isn't time to do socialising and running. You've got to combine the two.
You've got to combine the lot.
So top tip for you is do all your socialising on a run.
I think that's pretty decent, actually.
You can go to the gym, you can mix it up. How romantic. Do you want to go to the gym?
Because so how long would be has been your longest run in marathon training previously?
I
at
think
the moment it's a bit different. Obviously, you're knocking out
34 kilometres.
Yeah.
It's probably about the max. So that's
2.5 hours, 2 hours 45 minutes. That kind of for you.
Maybe.
So yeah, that's a lot of socialising. That's a lot of Jess talking.
That is, yeah. Or you can break it up. You can get people to join you for different parts of it. Yeah, you can cover a lot of ground, and I think it's quite nice actually. Once you get to those harder training runs, you get to the longer ones. If you've got company, it's where you get to the deep bits of the conversation. You can have those really nice.
Yeah, Jess, did you?
With people.
If you were just going from a half and you were used to that training plan, would you use the 10% rule and just creep up even further, or do you think you've got to think about a lot more?
I actually was talking about this with building up mileage. So I think when you can do a half marathon, you often think, well, I know I've been guilty of this, is you think, I'll start with a half marathon because I can do that. Whereas actually take it back down, even though you can do the half marathon distance, when you're starting that training block, start at 10, 12 kilometres and then build up gradually. So you can use the 10% rule. Just make sure that you're really prioritising those deload weeks. You don't need to increase 10% every week. You need to build in those rests as much as you are training.
Up, down a bit. Up, down a bit. And then that allows you to get there. And I think I was the same. So when I started my first marathon training in the summer of 2023, building up to Valencia, which was in December, I just had to get to the point where I was, there had been points in the last few years where I'd been running regular half marathons on a Sunday, but when I started that marathon training, there wasn't. And I had to start again almost from, not zero, but first of all, I was just trying to work. I was like, I'm going to run 3 times a week for this marathon. So I'm going to get used to running 3 times a week. I'm not worried about too much about how far those runs are. That's almost like a pre-phase. And then when I get to 16 weeks out, then my long run will start at 10 or 12K because I've built up to that level. And then it will go up every week, down in a deload week and then up again. That was definitely my approach. Can you remember the first time you trained for a marathon? Because you're
I'm trying to think
the
now.
youngest out of the 3 of us, but you're also by far the most experienced in terms of running marathons.
It was actually quite a long time ago. I don't know if I want to admit how long. I was 24. It was on my 24th birthday, my first marathon. I don't know if that makes me really sad.
I think I remember you telling me this.
But I was actually, I don't know if people know this, but I used to be a nurse. So I was actually doing shift work and then I was trying to train for this marathon alongside it. So I would just run along the Thames towards Richmond and then get the train back or run back. And I can remember those long slogs and just getting to it and just thinking this is harder than I'd expected. So I think, and something I spoke to Sophia a lot about in Seville as well, was you can be positive about it, and I think you should go into it with a really positive mindset, but also know to expect that it's going to get hard, because then you can manage those expectations and you can bring in techniques that will help you when it gets tough. So are you aiming for a cafe that you can stop and get a nice drink along the way? Are you going to meet up with someone who can help you with some of those miles? Like, have you got a favourite drink on you that you can have? Like, just something to help you when you know you're going to get those low moments in long training runs.
Yeah, I know a lot of people will use Parkrun not as a time trial, but as a destination. So if you live 5 or 10K away from a parkrun and you know you're going to have to do a long run.
Have you got to time it though, so you kind of hit? So what happens if there's loads of marshals that weekend and you've got to thank a lot more than normal? And then there's a bit more clapping, or there's loads of milestones, like maybe 5 people have reached 100 and you're waiting around going, well, this hasn't worked out.
Well, you get an extra long rest. What's
no, I think you don't stop. I think you just jog around a little loop and
you just do a little loop, do a little loop, and come back in. All right.
Yeah, you just got to know.
I would struggle to start again if I stopped.
So would I. After 18K or something.
I'm like kind of some kind of big tanker or something.
No, I'm in semi-retirement after 18K.
I'll never start again.
You thought you'd be busy socialising.
You're
talking about talking to people. Well, you'd be busy talking.
It's nice to have a little chat. Once you stop, it is hard. I know what you mean. It's hard to get going.
Yeah.
I don't think that's actually an age thing. I just think that's truth. I've just run 18 kilometres.
Would you rather do a parkrun sandwich, so you run to parkrun, do the parkrun and then run back,
yes,
or do you want to end at the end of parkrun and be able to go to brunch and celebrate with everyone?
Oh, yes, we know the answer to that for Rick, don't we? Why is that even a would you rather? That was quite a tame would you rather.
Yeah, it was
I'm used
quite
to
good,
a slightly more adventurous version of that game.
Okay, fine. I'll think of some better ones for next time.
Do you think, on your deload weeks when you go in from these, from a half to a whole, is a deload week a week that you think you've just got to do absolutely nothing?
No.
Because I have taken a deload week before as just going down to S&C. And
I thought you were going to say, I'm not moving.
letting my body just recover from running for a week.
I think you're an extreme example in that, one, you're only running a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
Because that's what your body lets you do with the surgery history. So that is, reducing, you don't have lots of runs to take out. So if you're running 4 or 5 times a week, then you could knock out 1 or 2 runs as part of your deload week.
Just take out a Wednesday. Just forget Wednesday didn't happen this week.
If you take out a day, that's half of your running gone.
Yeah.
Take out 2 days. So I think that's fine. I think it's everyone's different approach. I think the more normal approach is to still keep the frequency of running up. So if you run 3 or 4 times a week, still run 3 or 4 times a week in a deload week. Just don't run as far and don't run as hard.
Right.
So that you're getting a chance to freshen up. So it's almost like a mini taper, but then what you're doing is tapering for the next phase of work rather than tapering for your hard marathon effort.
Yeah, and I think I would also still include some speed work though. So it would be, I'd run less far and it would be slightly less intense, but I'd still want to keep some speed, like 1 speed session in that week.
Yeah, perhaps by intensity, I don't necessarily mean speed. You can still run fast, but whereas, in the middle of a hard training block, you might leave a tough interval workout feeling like, and knowing you're going to be a bit sore the next day. You could still do stuff which is faster, but maybe just increase the recoveries a little bit or just keep the overall volume lower. So you're not burying yourself in a workout. You're just doing something where you're putting your body through that speed and you're still conditioning your body and tissues and so on for that pace and movement, but you're not digging yourself a hole you won't get out of.
That kind of interests me because I was doing kind of 1 speed session, so intervals as training for the half, and then I'd do a long run, and then I might do a park run as well, like maybe every other week, just because of the injury history. But would I still, if you were going from a half to a whole, be doing that type of mix, that kind of 3-way mix in kind of equal amount of sessions, but just more of it? So if you're doing 6 by 400 meters on your intervals, would you need to double that to go to it if you're doing a full marathon?
What surprised me in my marathon training was there were still some of the interval sessions which were relatively short.
Okay.
But there was no need for me to focus on like 5K speed or faster than that, because the risks to injury were higher.
Too much.
When you're
different shoes as well.
Yeah, just to feel like you can run faster and be controlled and run as fast as possible. So I'd say that the pace is shifted to be slightly slower, and the reps got slightly longer, and the recoveries got slightly shorter. But initially, there were definitely workouts where you'd look at it and go, "Oh, that's a 10K workout." It wasn't necessarily. It doesn't. So it's not all of a sudden you don't go from overnight from running 5 times a kilometer. You don't all of a sudden go, "Oh, I'm going to run 20 times a kilometer because I'm doing a marathon." You're doing the interval session to put a different stimulus into your training.
Yeah.
You've still got a long run to put the time on feet into your training. So it's different. But yeah, there was a real extreme. Like right at the start of my block, my training session might have been, I don't know, sort of like a fartlek that was just 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minutes with 1 minute's recovery. So that's relatively short. And that's like, okay, let's get you doing something that's faster. But by the end of the training block, I actually looked back at this the other day because I still can't believe that I did it.
Really?
The hardest workout I did was 6 times 3K at slightly faster than marathon pace. 1K slightly slower than marathon pace, just continuous. So there's no recovery.
How many?
24 kilometers.
Oh my gosh.
Plus warm up and warm down.
Do you know when you're in that training, when you're doing those different types of training, so you're doing fartlek, you're doing intervals, you're doing different types of speed work, and then you got your long run, would you be wearing different shoes throughout the week as well as the same for the race? Or would you mix it all up?
I think we have a very privileged point of view on this. I was going to say, I don't think you need to. Like, I think if you could have 2 pairs, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, agree.
You don't have to, but we definitely come from a very privileged point of view where we test a lot of shoes, and I would definitely change my shoes a lot throughout the week, but you don't need to, and especially if you're going into your first marathon. Yeah, absolutely don't need to.
Ideal world for me, you've got one shoe which is for your recovery runs, steady runs, and potentially your long runs where you're not worried about the pace.
Yeah.
And they'll be an everyday trainer, or maybe even a support shoe if you need that. So they're going to give you a bit more love, a bit more support and cushioning and look after you. And then I'd have a shoe for running faster in. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the top of the range super shoe. It just has to be lighter and more responsive. And if people don't know what I mean because you've only ever had one pair of shoes, then go and try a shoe that is, go and speak to a specialty running retailer and ask them for something that can help you run a little bit faster. And loads of brands have a range of shoes right from their everyday shoe all the way up to the super, super fast shoes. And something in the middle might actually be your sweet spot that gives you enough support, but allows you to run tempo or marathon pace or your intervals and feel like, oh, I can certainly, we joke about you being one-paced, Rick. But when people do feel one-paced, sometimes something that helps you get that little bit of extra speed can tip you over the edge into a new pace.
You joke, the guy who ran past me on the finishing line on Saturday shout, "Hey, one pace, Rick, I know what time I've run today."
No, did they really?
That's so good.
And what did you run?
22:50.
And what do you normally run? About 23 minutes?
About 22 minutes, yeah.
So hang on, you're 22:50, and what's your personal best?
22:38.
Whoa.
So you were within 12 seconds, despite your kind of kamikaze, crazy first kilometre.
Yeah, I was within 12, so it wasn't too bad. But, you're up on the whirl, you're socialising, so you're not getting the best sleep,
Yeah.
So,
I thought you meant socialising on the run, but no, I think we meant
not socialising.
Okay.
Just,
you socialise outside of running. Oh, got it. Okay,
exactly.
Fine.
I went up this amazing restaurant. I have to tell you about it. Panoramic 34 in Liverpool. You can see over the whole of Liverpool. Yes. Obviously, phenomenal. 42 marathons. Say you didn't have loads and loads of trainers. How many trainers do you think, sets of trainers do you think you would need to run all those marathons?
Isn't it 100 miles per pair of shoes?
No.
100K?
No, I think so. It's not. There's no fixed number.
I'm in trouble.
Okay.
There's no fixed number. There was always been a lot of chat around that kind of 300, 500 mile, 500 kilometer kind of per
bit more than what I said.
Per pair of shoes. But there's loads of shoes that will give you more than that, and there's loads of shoes that will give you less. And it really depends on how you run, where you plant your feet, how heavy you are, the type of. So there's no, but like, yeah, I think if Jess didn't do any other running in the year, then you're probably talking about at least 2 or 3 pairs of shoes, just for those marathons. Plus, she's doing extra running just for the sake of it.
Exactly. You know, shoes should have a mileage clock on them. Every shoe should have a little ticker on the side, and it can tell you how far it's gone.
You know, you can track that in your various different apps.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that is a lot more admin. I feel like this way is quite nice.
Do you know what though? You sometimes ask me, because you showed me at the end of last year about how Strava tells you how much you've done in a year, and you're like, how many, and you looked at my mileage and you compared it to someone else in the office, and you were pleasantly surprised by my mileage compared to somebody else. Yeah. Let's not mention them. Is
there a point to this story?
Yes. I don't log all my runs because I always forget
you
to
don't
save
log all
it.
your runs.
I do, and I go out, I press start and I press stop. And then 2 hours later, I look at my watch and it's still ticking over.
No, this is madness. You're literally like my sister.
It's still ticking over.
She keeps it running and she's in the car. And I'm like, you need to edit this activity.
Yeah, so then I'm just like, I'll have to delete it now. So
this
discard.
Is chaos. You know,
so discard it.
So
Why
discard it.
Oh my gosh.
Because it would have looked like I'd ran.
No, if you already stopped it.
You can cut it back. You can edit it once it's been posted.
Yeah.
Honestly, call for help when that happens. You do not need to delete your run.
Say this again.
I've never seen Jess look as stressed as she is right now.
It was on about an hour and 54 minutes and I'd only gone out for 8K and I thought, well, this is gone. Discard. You sure you want to discard?
You can trim activities.
You can call me in that situation. That is literally an emergency.
No, you two are looking at me like I've got 2 heads, but actually, there'll be a lot of people listening and watching this right now going, you can edit your activity.
Oh, should we do a very quick Strava? I might have mentioned this before, in which case, sorry, I can't never remember. The little Strava Easter egg. One is that you can trim an activity. Also, the other one is that if you run with a whole bunch of people, like you did at Seville, then you go into your Strava activity and it'll say manage group. And then if you tap into that, it'll show you all of the people that ran with you. So if you've actually gone for a run with friends, then they'll be there. But if you've gone for a run in a mass participation event, all of the people that finished very close to you and were running with you most of the time will appear in that. If you shake your phone, then it'll give you the option to kudos all of those athletes.
I remember you telling me this.
I've actually got another good one for you.
Go on, okay.
So on one of my marathons, my watch died. So I had to then track it on my phone. And I was really worried that it would look like 2 different runs. It doesn't come up with 42 kilometers.
Yeah.
You can merge the 2 activities. How good is that?
I didn't know
you can upload both GPX files and it makes it into one.
Depending on what type of watch you've got.
No, just GPX file.
Yeah, I think an incredible video would be if we just asked Rick to do that. If we just set him the technological challenge of it, and we set up a time-lapse camera on his desk whilst we watch him try and solve this technological conundrum.
GPX files.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I
I've been on so many runs with Jess where I've gone, Jess, can you just set up the directions on this?
I think there's few photos from runs where I've just been looking at you like, how do you not know?
Yeah, and then there's other times I've been on a run recently where I've gone to change the screen so I can see my current running speed. People are with me here. Yeah. And I've hit lap time and it just keeps lapping. I'm just like, I'll give up.
That's
stop
annoying.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, you've hit the lap button.
I've hit the lap button.
You
instead of the screen.
You can undo the lap though when you press lap by mistake. It pops up on the screen and says like undo lap, and you get like a little countdown timer that.
Okay. I think we should go on a run with Rick sometime.
There's a whole video in this. Anyway,
I think we should set up as a. Maybe we'll do it at London Marathon this year. We should, like Apple have like the Genius bar.
Yeah.
We should set up like a Rick bar. And one, it would have to be a real bar, right?
This sounds like great
It would have to be a real bar.
And 2, we could just have a queue of people that have come to ask Rick to help with their technological issues. So when you buy your grandma their first iPad, and then you book a session where they can teach them how to use the iPad. Like we could.
Yeah, with your grandma, and you'll be there.
That's what this has come to. I do like the idea of a tech bar with me behind it. Drink.
I've got a final point before we go to to talk about news and so on, which is that one thing people might not know about is how to set their time or pace for the marathon if they're running a half marathon. And so I was looking at a few things ahead of this recording, and there's a famous British running coach called Frank Horwell, and there's lots of different other formulae as well that you can use. So the first thing is take a known distance that you know what you can run for it, and generally it should be an all-out effort rather than just like I ran a 10k the other day and it took me this long. Yeah, it should be like in a race. And then there's loads of calculators that will give you an estimate based on if you're in the current fitness to run that 10k or 5k. Yeah. But the longer the distance, probably the more accurate you're going to get a prediction. And then it will give you a calculation. But the Frank Horwell one is to take your flat out 10k time from your current training cycle, so not from like 3 years ago. And then you do 5 times that time. So multiply it by 5 and then take 10 minutes off.
So you'd recommend going out for a time trial at the start of your training block to give yourself a...
Not necessarily,
estimate?
but if you've got a recent enough 10K or 5K or something that's reflective of your approximate state of fitness. So you're not just going, oh yeah, 5 years ago I ran this time, and then assuming that that's your benchmark. Take something as a reasonable benchmark where you're like, okay, I'm pretty confident I could run X for 5 or 10K. And use that in the calculators to give you something to work from. And then once you get into your marathon training plan and you're trying to do things at defined paces, then you start making adjustments going, oh, I can't get anywhere near that. Okay, I'm going to have to revise my estimate down a little bit. Or, okay, this still feels realistic. And then you start working towards that goal. So for me, I did the maths and it seemed pretty accurate as to, I basically did some theoretical numbers as to what 10K shape I would like to be in, and therefore what marathon I might be able to run if I was in that shape. And it was that they were broadly reflective of what I've been able to do in the past.
I thought you were going to tell us Rick's prediction of his marathon time and say
Well, I was just doing a lot of
4:05.
maths in my head there. But there you go.
It's got to be 5 past, right?
Yeah, 5 past. That's what you should have said when if anyone's doubting themselves, when you were talking to them in Seville, don't let yourself be set by a hard time of 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 4:30. Just go for a random number and say, I want to run under 5 hours, 6 minutes.
And then run 15 minutes faster than that.
Yeah, and then do that. Anyway, should we do some news?
Right, first up, we had crammed some recordings in and then we missed a weekend of news. So this one is actually a little while ago now at the point of publish here, but it's so big that we should talk about it. And
Barcelona
half marathon. Yeah. And that is Uganda's Jacob Kiplimo, who became the first person ever to run under, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, under 57 minutes
That is-
for a half marathon.
I actually can't fathom. Can you
He
fathom
ran
that?
56 minutes and 42 seconds.
And this was in perfect conditions of 13 degrees
Yeah, you
Celsius.
love a weather stat, don't you?
I
Was
do
he
love a
running
weather stat.
downhill the whole
He also
time?
broke
With-
the world
with
record
no wind.
for 15 kilometres on the way.
How warm was it in
It's not
Seville?
an official world record, it's a world
Oh.
best.
18 degrees?
I think it's one of the warmest cities in Europe, Seville, isn't it? If not the
we
warmest. Anyway, yeah.
I
to Barcelona.
almost don't have any other words for that because it's so fast, I can't quite understand it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, if we can't understand it,
Oh, actually,
we must move on.
I did have an extra fact, which is that I think his 5K time from 5K to 10K, bear in mind he's got to run 21.1K,
Yeah.
was 13 minutes and 12 seconds.
I just can't understand how people can run this fast.
But that time on its own is a time that in previous years, certainly prior to Super Shoes anyway, would have qualified you for the Olympics at the 5K on the track. And he's run that having already run 5K, and then he's and then he's got another 11K to go after he's run that split.
Let's review that again in 5 years' time and see where we're at.
Well, I mean, people will be running 11 minutes or something.
They won't be.
Okay.
Nope.
Should we talk about the UK Indoor Championships in Birmingham?
Yes, I competed in this once upon a time.
Did you?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Well, I used to move around a little bit.
2017?
Oh, no, sorry, longer ago than that.
Oh, really?
I think the last time I ran an indoor in the British Championships was in 2011.
Wow.
So yeah,
You just didn't like the indoor in the end, or too many injuries?
I did. I just got injured all the
Yeah,
time. But
yeah.
I won the 3K in 2011
Yeah.
and then went to the European Indoor Champs in Paris
Is
that
it?
year.
Oh, I see. So has it been indoor season recently? Because
Yeah.
Keely Hodgkinson had her inaugural event,
The
didn't
Keely
she?
Classic. And
Yeah.
actually, she didn't end up being able to run because she hurt herself in advance. So
Can you just set up an event?
if you're Olympic champion, you can.
Is that it? You just go, right, I'd like my own event. And how does
Well, no,
that
I think-
fit into the world of meets? Because don't you have to plan that?
I don't actually know how that came about as to whether they almost like rebranded an existing event as her event, or whether her management and agents and all that sort of stuff got together, or whether it's a British Athletics. I actually don't know. I should maybe look into that for next time.
Do you know what's
Are you thinking of setting one up?
Well, no, it's just
You want the Rick Kelsey? What would yours be called?
mine would be called the Last Man on Earth event.
There's a race format called
quite good, that.
Devil Takes the Hindmost, which is basically last man standing.
The Last Man on Earth.
Yeah,
5,000
that could be,
meters.
so it could be. Yeah, it could be. You could use that format
Yeah.
and call it the Last Man on Earth, and then basically every lap, the person who is in last place gets eliminated.
That is such a good idea, Andy. You didn't go to Cambridge for no reason.
That's just what it was all for.
I'm just going to defend Keely Hodgkinson, by the way, because she got. I saw a few people giving us some stick about her having her own event.
Why?
But I think she's brilliant. I think.
Why would you
I
get
just
stick
think.
for it?
I think. Well, because they were saying, well, is everyone going to get their own event now? She she's got this event, she set it up. A lot of people ran, a lot of people love it. It's like, well, we're just going to give everyone their own event, and it's been too many events.
I'm sure it wasn't
overall.
her being like a prima donna going, by the way, guys. I imagine it's like, let's celebrate the fact that we've got an individual Olympic champion in an event which we've got good heritage over. Like
exactly.
Kelly Holmes did the double 800 and 1500 in 2004. So
I think
why wouldn't we celebrate?
I'm not going to go too deep in this, but I think there's a certain, and it's a small thing in the British psyche compared to the American psyche, where Americans really champion their champions a bit more than we do. And I sometimes notice it when, on a much smaller scale, when I write something in the paper about a success story of someone who maybe has done well in their career and maybe earns a lot of money. Sometimes in Britain, I feel like that there is a small tendency from a small amount of people to kind of pull that down. Whereas in America, people do amazing. They're like, yeah, that's great. Let's go for it. And, you know, I love that Keely Hodgkinson's done this. And she came into the Times actually before Christmas and did this big spread, this big piece, and she was lovely. A friend of mine actually did a wardrobe for her, and she's really down to earth. She's dead sound. She's just very ambitious.
Well, I think but she's won the Olympics, so you can't do that without being ambitious. I think we should, anything that could make people be excited about athletics is signing up. So we've digressed from the news story.
Sorry.
But really, really quickly, there were lots of amazing results. I was watching on the live feed, and I'm biased, so I paid particular attention to the longest events. The longest events are the 1500 and the 3000, so they don't go longer than that indoors. I mean, I once did a 5K indoors, which is 25 laps, and that was awful. But some incredible performances. So George Mills set a championship record in the 3K of
love George Mills on this podcast, don't we?
Son of former England footballer Danny Mills. And it was a great race, actually. It was really close. He didn't just run away with it, because recently he set I want to say, British record. I don't know whether it was a European record as well.
He's fired up, George. Doesn't take any stick, George. Doesn't take any.
Paris, he really
doesn't take any stick.
So he did
giving it some welly.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
And then Neil Gawley also set a championship record in the 1500 meters. So those ones I was interested in. And then in the women's 3000 meters, Hannah Nuttall actually outkicked Laura Muir. So Laura Muir was a bit of a darling of British middle distance running.
Definitely.
And made an early bid for the front and was overtaken towards the end. So I love it when there's like a real close battle going on.
There's so much going on at the moment in athletics. It's just brilliant. What a fantastic industry we're in. Life is just good at the moment, isn't it? It's just good. Everything's exciting. Brilliant. Let's do some questions.
I can't wait for Rick Summer's own event. This is just going to be so brilliant.
Oh my God, yeah. Rick Kelsey's last man on earth. Where's that going to be?
There.
With Wembley Arena.
Questions. I can't believe this, Owen. You've done it again. Yana Penrose with no address. Oh, right. Okay. All right. Sorry.
So this is from the Running Channel Club, and Owen's defending himself that people don't necessarily declare where they're from when they pop the question
we're gonna have to add
into the
that
feed in the club.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yana.
Please.
Yana from the club. Yana from the club. Hey, gang. Does anyone take gels with caffeine in them during runs? Can anyone share their own experiences? Pros and cons welcome. Do you remember Sarah, up until very recently, could not take any form of caffeine because she just went doulala?
She started drinking cups of tea.
She has, or just all of a sudden at 27 has started drinking tea.
I don't think she's 27 yet, is she?
I think she is. I think she had a birthday, like moving house or something. She wanted to throw as much into his life on one day. She wanted to go to Spain, move house, move to the country, get a dog, probably get engaged, you know.
Is that?
Do you know something we don't know?
No, I don't. But she just likes, she likes to do everything in the space of an hour.
She's going to listen back to this and go, what is Rick talking
Why has
about?
Rick just announced my engagement without me knowing?
He's aged me and married me off.
Pretty sure she's 27. All right, anyway. Jess.
I would take caffeine if I was doing a marathon effort or a race effort, I would, going for a time, I would take caffeinated gels. But to caveat that, if you haven't practiced with them, please do not take caffeinated gels. Mm-hmm. They are definitely take some getting used to. It can really upset your stomach.
Can we have one episode where he doesn't mention
Sorry, Rick, but they may make you poo yourself.
Actually, they didn't get that. I tried one in my longest runs during my marathon because I wanted to. Caffeine is a proven performance enhancer, so I wanted to have the benefit if I could. And actually, it did make me feel good in the run.
Yeah.
But it was a Sunday, and then I'd done that run fairly early, and I didn't have any stomach issues on the run.
Didn't you?
But then, as I was finishing, and then getting changed, and like the rest of the day, my stomach just didn't feel right. I felt like I had like real kind of almost like stomach cramps.
So what's the message there?
is test them. So is that I would say yes to caffeine if you're purely looking for a performance, or a boost when you're really flagging in the latter stages of a marathon, but don't do them unless you've been able to try them in like a controlled environment of a shorter run. So I would try it on a short run to start with, rather than risking taking it fairly early on a 2-hour run.
I see what you mean, but if the test is volatile, then I'm not sure I want to test.
No,
We've exaggerated for that. I think the reason that you get real tummy troubles is because you're also doing it whilst doing quite intense exercise.
Stomach problems anyway.
Yeah, because I do drink a lot of tea, and that's got caffeine in it, hasn't it? A lot of caffeine.
Not the same amount as these
It wouldn't be
gels.
quite as extreme. Bear in mind, you'd have a pretty empty stomach towards the latter stages of a marathon. You're fatigued already, and so that's why you need to know that your body's going to tolerate it. But if I could take it, I would, because I think it's a pretty, one of the very few like legal performance enhancers that has years and years of evidence behind it that says like this will make you better.
It's mad, like legal performance enhancers kind of doesn't seem to go in the same sentence, but I know what you mean. I know what you're saying.
I don't mean it in the sense of performance enhancing drugs.
Exactly. Just a good time and can help with your run. Jess, thanks for coming on. You've come on and it's lasted a lot longer. Don't know what that says about you, Sarah. But before we go, I was going to ask both of you, a man with a bit of power about him and mother hen.
I was wondering what my title was going to be there.
What are we doing for the London Marathon? Are we going to see people, humans?
Yes, we will. We will have a pop-up space at the London Marathon. Watch out on all of the running channels, social channels, because we're going to announce exactly where it's going to be and what we're going to be doing. But there's lots of really exciting stuff there. And in fact, Jess is in charge of making it as epic as it can possibly be.
So excited.
I am
honestly,
psyched for it.
I can't wait.
Oh, I literally had one of the best weeks of my life last year.
Well,
doing that.
prepared for it to be even better.
It was like honeymoon-esque.
Yeah, you swept in 2 hours a day. shook
I know,
hands.
Owen's laughing. Don't laugh at that. It's not funny. It's not funny, Owen. Back in the room.
But it's true.
Well, honestly, I'm almost crying. I've had that much fun.
I've loved doing this with you guys. It's thankfully Jess has taken the edge off being with you.
Yeah.
So that's really helped
I
out.
can eat a drink. Let's go and do a club podcast. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.